Despite Duarte's warmth and the genuine friendship he showed, if anything happened to the Laconian ruler, he would be executed shortly thereafter. Tying Paolo's safety to his own was how Duarte could guarantee the scientist's best efforts on his behalf. They both understood this, and there was no ill will attached. Paolo's death wouldn't be punishment exactly, just a clear disincentive to letting his patient die. As relationships went, it was probably the most honest one Paolo had ever had. Hey guys, Pete here. Today I have an Expanse video where I thought I'd preview the events that happen in the final trilogy of books that come after Season 6. I want to do that without spoiling the end of the story, because if you've enjoyed the TV show, then you're bound to enjoy the books, and therefore I think you should read them. Although I will be spoiling what happens in between the end of the show and the beginning of the trilogy, including the first few chapters of Book 7, Persepolis Rising. I'm doing that so I'll have something to talk about, but also because those are available to read free through the Look Inside feature on Amazon. So you can go ahead and do that first if you want to. And with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. Right up front, I want to say that I'm of the opinion that the series has a satisfying ending. I really enjoyed it, and there's probably some recency bias involved in this, but I do think that the final 3 books are the Expanse at its best. That wouldn't be possible without what came before, but the series didn't fall off at all. It's the kind of ending that the internet hive mind was mostly able to put together before the final book came out. That led to some criticism from the super engaged about it being predictable, but overall it seems that most people would agree that they managed to deliver an enjoyable conclusion. They do answer a lot of the questions that readers had been speculating about, and it gives each of the characters we've been following for so long endings that make sense. You do find out a lot more about the Gate Builder civilization. You get some insights into their history, more about how they used the protomolecule, and more about the things that they left behind. It's all presented in an interesting way where I don't even think you have to fully understand what's going on with them to enjoy the way things play out. The unknown aggressors remain somewhat more mysterious, but that's mainly because they're so alien that they're kind of beyond our comprehension, but you do learn enough to tie that part of the story together. Ty Frank has said that he looks at the 9 books as being 3 duologies in a trilogy. Books 1 and 2 go together with the protomolecule being discovered and the effect that that has. Books 3 and 4 are the Ring Gates opening and us going through them. And books 5 and 6 cover the war that breaks out as a result of everything that happened in the first 4. Books 7 through 9 are when things loop back to the protomolecule aspects, since humanity does in fact start using the Ring Gate network to reach the stars. The books also do a lot of genre hopping. The authors have said that book 1 was a noir detective story with horror elements, book 2 was a political thriller, book 3 was a haunted house story, and book 4 is a western. I would say that books 5 and 6 are a disaster story and a war story, and Daniel Abraham has referred to the last 3 as their epic fantasy trilogy, and he made the distinction that it wasn't Lord of the Rings. Of course, it's all wrapped up in a character-driven space opera, and you might not have even noticed the genre shifts from watching the TV show. But with the addition of Laconia and their continued meddling with the protomolecule, there are some major changes going on that increase the stakes in the final 3 volumes, and that does give the trilogy a different feeling. The big surprise at the beginning of Book 7 is that 30 years have passed since the Transport Union was founded. In that time, things were pretty quiet compared to the years leading up to the war with the Free Navy. Earth slowly but surely started to recover from the asteroid attacks, Mars settled into its diminished role in the system, and several of the new colonies beyond the ring started to thrive. The crew of the Roci enjoyed uneventful prosperity with plenty of work available for a gunship. And this quiet stretch in their history is why the authors decided not to write books to fill in this time period. There could have been another trilogy in between, but the big story wouldn't have moved much, and I think they made the right decision to skip it. Of course, Alex is still alive in the books. He gets married and divorced again in this gap, and has a son who's not really in his life. Bobby and Clarissa become permanent crew members. The latter's health continues to get worse because of the black market mods that she got to try to kill Holden, but she's still hanging in there. And at at the beginning of Persepolis Rising, Holden and Naomi are thinking of retiring. I guess I should mention that aging has changed in the Expanse's timeline. If you think about it, from the cant to the beginning of Book 7, about 40 years have passed. Not everyone is exactly the same age, but that does put everyone around their 70s. What you have to keep in mind is that due to advances in science and medicine, lifespan has increased, and anti-aging drugs are something that everyone takes. On average on Earth, people live into their 120s, and a 70-year-old resembles a 40-year-old in our timeline. Everyone on the crew is much older, but they're still not what we would consider aging. And I've seen that some people don't like this time jump for that reason, because they're older. But I think it was absolutely necessary for the story. Things needed to develop. And I think it adds another dimension to the characters, which I really appreciate. They've been through a lot, they've seen a lot, their youth has passed, but they're still completely capable, and they have to deal and adjust just like we all do. I mentioned that the inner planets haven't regained their position in the decades after the war, and where the big changes have happened are in the belt and beyond. The transport union has been successful and has improved things for Belters. There were 3 massive void cities built. These are essentially settlements where 200,000 or so people live that can also act as battleships. The void cities and Medina Station are the jewels of the belt, which now holds real power due to its role coordinating things with the colonies through the ring space. There are more than 1,300 systems with habitable planets and over 80 developing colonies that are named in the books. These only account for a fraction of the total activity going on, so it should be clear that humanity is in a much different situation than it was 30 years prior. They're spread out and everything is connected through the Ring Gate network. One thing that might be confusing if you jumped right into Book 7 after watching the show is that the book version of Drummer is the president of the Transport Union. It might feel like Kara G was running things the whole time. This is not the same character that Holden handed things over to in the season 6 finale. That was the first president, who was named Michio Pa in the books, and this version of Drummer is the 5th. Pa served and got things rolling, and then didn't play a vital role in the rest of the series. At the beginning, the ring to Laconia is still closed off. They were one of the few colonies that were able to reach self-sufficiency right from the start, and as you can imagine, they've not been idle in the decades that passed. Book 7 opens with the prologue from Paolo Cortazar's point of view, and in that you get an idea of how Laconia plans to shape the events in the Final Trilogy. They have been actively experimenting and working with the protomolecule in that time, and have managed to avoid most of the pitfalls experienced by their predecessors. Winston Duarte holds the position of absolute military dictator of the entire system, and in the 3 decades since the breakaway fleet had passed through the Laconia Gate, they've built up a little civilization. It's based on a military culture focused on discipline and dedication to this cause, which amounts to an updated dream of Mars. Duarte believes he's the right person to lead humanity into the next chapter of its existence, and only worries about what might happen when he can no longer do that. In the prologue, you learn that he has a plan to solve that issue, and of course they are also now ready to return through the ring and introduce their ideas to the rest of humanity. Things escalate accordingly from there, and one more time the crew of the Roci find themselves in the middle of things early in the trilogy. You learn that Laconia has achieved their technological advantage, and that the problems that Marco and the Free Navy caused for the inner planet set the stage for them to be unprepared for what they're up against. And I suppose that's what there is to say about the setup. The scale of the story is expanded, and even though they understand how to avoid having ships getting eaten by transiting the rings, they happen upon other ways to agitate the unknown aggressors. The crew do get split up again, and not all of them make it out alive. Some old characters return, and of course some new ones emerge. As one of the only people that experienced the bullet on Illis, Elvia Koya plays a prominent role, and Kara and Zan and the Strange Dogs also return to play important roles of their own. The gate builder tech they found on Laconia is crucial to their development, but it's not the most interesting thing that was left behind. That distinction goes to a giant diamond structure the size of Jupiter in the Adros system, which is empty otherwise. When they encounter and study that for the first time, they wonder if it might not be a backup drive containing the memories of the Gate Builder hive mind. So things get interesting and weird, and as I mentioned earlier, you do learn a lot about these ancient civilizations. The character stuff with the Roci crew continues to be top notch, and the ending manages to do all of them justice. I don't know what else there is to say other than you're missing out on a lot of great story if you don't read these books. I do think the best way to go about it is to start at the beginning, and not only because I think it makes more sense that way, I think in this case the show and books actually complement each other in a really great way. Having the authors working on both, when you look at the changes, it just helps flesh out what they were going for. I'm sure it's possible to start at book 7 if you've watched the whole show, but you will be a little disoriented in the beginning, and that will compound the effect of the 30-year time jump. Doing it that way is still better than not doing it though, and it's worth mentioning that the audiobooks are great in this case because Jefferson Mays does a fantastic job reading them, and they're easy to follow since you're already familiar with most of the characters from the show. And I think that feels like a good place to leave things. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about the time period between the series, and if you have any questions about the final 3 books, just make sure you mark those with spoiler tags. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.